Welcome to the Church of Obelisk. My name is Jon. Today we're going to take a look at a tier list for the Offlane role. This is based on pubs, not competitive play, and it's heavily stat driven. It's mostly based on data, not just my personal experiences, although obviously my own opinions filter into that to some extent. And this is primarily based on higher level play, because if you're down in, let's say, 1k 2k, you really can pick anything can work, because everyone's just making so many mistakes that balance really hardly matters. But once you get to like 4 or 5k, it really does start to matter a lot which heroes are currently strong and which are not so strong. So I'm primarily looking at higher MMR gameplay, but I'm also taking into account lower level to some extent, and I'm going to let you know when there's heroes where there's significant disparity between their performance in higher and lower levels. So what do these tiers mean? S means the heroes are overpowered, they're just clearly much better than the rest. A is the strong heroes that are above average. B is sort of the balanced heroes that are, they're fine. C is heroes that are more situational, that you generally should not be picking, but they might be still good in certain situations. And then D tier is just heroes you should not pick in the offlane role. So without further ado, let's jump right into the tier list. So first of all, S tier. This is not a mistake. S tier is actually empty here. I thought about including some heroes in S tier, but I feel like there's no real hero in the offlane that sort of stands out above the rest. There's a bunch of heroes that are really strong, but not really 1 or 2 or 3 heroes that sort of really stand out. So I left the S tier empty here. But then we have a pretty extensive A tier. So we start off with Beastmaster. Very powerful offlaner, strong pushing power. He is kind of polarizing as an offlaner in the lane, in that sometimes he just really wins lanes really hard, other times he can tend to lose pretty hard, so it's a bit for snowball hero. If you get a good start, then it's usually a very strong Beastmaster game. If you get a bad start, you're gonna struggle. So this hero is particularly good in higher level games. So you look here in Divine and Immortal, he has above 50% win rate, like above 55% win rate pretty much everywhere. The Ancient still very high win rates, but when you get lower here, it starts to drop off. And down in the lower tiers, win rates really are no longer that good. And that's primarily because this hero is, first of all, hard to play. And secondly, he's a tempo-based, pushing-based hero. And if your team is bad at taking objectives, which is quite often in lower level games, Beastmaster is less strong. So you want to have a more focused team that sort of takes objectives with you and makes use of your mid-game power spike. And that's just much more likely to happen in higher level games. So the higher you go in MMR, the stronger this hero becomes. Next we have OD, who's kind of a funky hero. He's more traditionally played as a mid laner, but he actually works quite well as an offlaner. You play sort of heavily around your ultimate, not so much about the right click. You get Meteor Hammer, which really helps out OD. You can combo it with Astral Imprisonment to get a Meteor Hammer drop that's almost undodgeable if your opponent doesn't have something like BKB or other instant stuff. And yeah, this makes the hero very powerful once you complete the Meteor Hammer. And so this item definitely want to rush on this hero. And after that, you get stuff like Blink Dagger. There's things like a BKB, and you're more of a caster hero. And you play around, your ultimate, and have that a lot of utility with Astral Imprisonment, which, this hero is not like super highly item dependent, so he works just fine as a POS 3. And as a POS 3, the fact that this hero tends to fall off a bit later on is not as big of a deal. Next we have Lycan. It's a very similar hero to Beastmaster, but unlike Beastmaster, he got some direct nerfs in the post-TI patch. Nothing huge, it's mostly enough to his Scepter, which is no longer quite as powerful as it used to be, but still definitely very viable. And yeah, this hero, if it's a good Lycan game, this hero can really take off. And similar thing applies that I said, well, Beastmaster applies to Lycan as well. He also a hero that's doing really well in high MMR games, but the lower you go, the lower the win rate tends to get, well, except for this anomaly here at Ancient. But generally, in lower level games, this hero doesn't do as well because games just tend to drag on longer and Lycan loses his timing. Then we have Enigma, a hero that can be played both in the offlane and also like in pass 4 or 5. But here in the offlane role, I think is quite strong. He has very solid win rates. Also, same for lower brackets. He's probably even a bit stronger in lower tier games. This hero has a nice laning phase. You can also keep denying those range creeps, and this is gonna push back the lane. So you're not really like super aggressive in the lane, but it's also hard for opponents to do something against you because you're going to be pushing back the lane. You're going to have the experience advantage. But if you do play Enigma, you need to make sure that the pole camps are blocked, because polling is very strong if you keep eating those range creeps. And obviously this hero has a strong late game team fight potential, but in the early game you should not be building around your ultimate too much. So rushing Blink Dagger on this hero is almost always a mistake. Generally you want to get like one sort of medium cost item before you start thinking about your black hole. So you want to open with something like a Emerald Dominator or like a mech or some sort of mid-range item like that, or you can get something like a Solar Crest even, and then you can start thinking about like a Blink Dagger and BKB in either order. Next we have Visage, a very strong side laner depending on the lanes. Visage, thanks to his W, which at level 1 can power out 245 damage, which is, like 2 or 3 times what other level 1 nukes can do. So, but to power that up, you need heroes to be taking damage near you, either enemy heroes or allied heroes. So you want to have lanes where there's a lot of fighting and sort of committed fighting, not just sort of harassment. So you want to have some sort of lane partner that's more of a brawler, something like a Tusk or a Spirit Breaker or a Clockwork, some sort of hero like that can take some damage and also dish out some damage, and then you can get a lot of kills with Soul Assumption. But if that's not the case, then Visage is kind of underwhelming as a laner. Also, you want, because you're position 3 and you can't really initiate as Visage, you want to have a pos 4 hero that has some initiation. So the heroes that I mentioned earlier are really good for that. Also something like a Earthshaker, for example. Earthshaker, not the best laner, but still like a good partner for Visage, not so much because of the lane, but just because later on it's very nice to have that team fight to pair with the single target damage that Visage provides. And yeah, this hero has been buffed multiple times. He has a very solid win rates, even the pick rates are not the highest. But because this hero is so much under the radar, he was, I think, only picked twice at TI. He's probably not going to get nerfed, might even get some buffs. So Visage, I think, is quite a powerful hero, and I think definitely a hero worth learning if you enjoy these kinds of heroes. Next, we have Brewmaster, a hero who can have a bit of an awkward laning stage sometimes, but he makes up for it with excellent team fight, with a primal split, also team fight that does not depend too much on items. This hero can do well even if he hasn't had the best lane. But that said, it's still very great if you can get an Aghanim's. That just makes your ultimate so much stronger. So this hero can do a lot in team fights, and is good at pushing. So definitely a hero that's quite strong at the moment. He can provide so much chaos and disruption in team fights. Also, if you get the Storm Panda, it can dispel and an AoE. Also does 1000 damage to summons, so great against illusion heroes. This hero just offers a lot, but it's not that easy to play, so getting the most out of that ultimate can be kind of tough. Next, we see the background anime girl here. It's Marcy with her whistles, and yeah, this hero is, when she first was launched, she was kind of broken, but she's gotten some stealth nerfs, and now she's still pretty strong, but no longer completely broken. So you can play her in different roles, but probably offlane works the best. You want her to have some farm, you want her to be a bit of a core, so that you can make, the most of all that damage boost you get. Like you have this thing that gives you bonus damage and lifesteal, which of course also works on another hero, so you can cast it on like carry, for example, or your mid laner, but then you also benefit from it yourself, because as an offlane you're also going to have at least a decent amount of items. And yeah, this hero, she's just really strong at fighting. She has some bunch of AoE damage, she has those repositioning tools, and she has mobility. She's just a very complete package. There's not many weaknesses in this hero. Next, we have Night Stalker, who is a strong brawling kind of hero, and especially that crippling fear silence can be incredibly powerful. It's a 7-second duration silence, which is just insane, and it's AoE, and it's something that you cannot dispel, so we can't build things like Yules or Manta against it. Only thing that really helps is BKB or something like a Force Staff. So this hero can be very powerful. You would typically build like your phase boots, you build maybe something like an Echo Saber, maybe something like a drum, since Echo Saber's been nerfed a bit, and then you want to quickly go into BKB, and once you have the BKB ready, it's very hard to deal with this Night Stalker. Next, we have one of the most traditional offlaners in the game. It's Darkseer. He is, of course, a bit of a situational hero. It's not a hero you want to pick in any kind of game. You can definitely be heavily counted in the lane. So, for example, you're playing as an Oracle, you can have a really tough time because you can just keep dispelling your Iron Shells. But if you get a good lane, then Darkseer can do a lot. And in the mid to late game and team fights, when Darkseer really shines. And if you pick Darkseer, you tend to want to have core heroes in your team that can benefit from Iron Shells. So you want some melee heroes that can stick on their targets. So, a carry like a PA, for example, or like a Spectre. It's kind of heroes that are hard to kite. You want to have like a mid laner that's like a Spirit, for example, Ember Spirit or Void Spirit that can sort of go in there, jump on the targets, and they're hard to shake off. So these kinds of heroes is what you want as the other cores if you're playing Darkseer. Or even something like a Lycan, for example, that can just run at people at very high speed. If you don't have these kinds of cores, then Darkseer loses a lot of potential. It's also very much about what kind of opponents you're facing, because you're going to be creating illusions with Wall of Replica. So if you're up against a hero like Drow Ranger or Luna, these kind of heroes that have strong illusions, then Wall of Replica is very powerful. But if you're up against, let's say, a Lone Druid enemy team, Wall of Replica is pretty useless because you can't make illusions of the bear, and the main hero is not going to have any items. And so it all depends a lot on what kind of game you're in. So this hero has not that high of a pick rate, but when he's picked, he tends to do quite well. Then we have Earthshaker, just a very solid hero. In the offlane, you can struggle in certain matchups, especially against ranged carries. But you don't really pick this hero for the laning stage. You pick this hero for his tremendous teamfight prowess. Of course, you can also play him as a pos 4. But as pos 3, you can more reliably get your dagger at a decent timing. And you can often get things like an Aghanims to jump around even more. You can get, BKB at some point, obviously. You can get other mobility items, like Force Staff or Shadow Blades for additional mobility and initiation. And yeah, this hero just it's just incredibly solid as a team fighter, and is strong enough right now to be played as an offlaner, definitely. Then we've got Necrophos, who's kind of a lane dominator. Also here that has to win his lane. If he loses the lane, he's kind of very underwhelming because he relies on getting last hits to region up with that Heartstopper aura. So this hero obviously against like magic damage, burst, he can struggle because then his Ghost Shroud doesn't help him as much. So it's also a bit matchup dependent, but there's a lot of games where Necrophos can be powerful and provide lots of utility with his aura, and especially against these sort of high value targets, Reaper Scythe is quite powerful, and it's a strong counter against certain heroes like say for example Huskar, who's constantly running around with low HP. Well, Reaper Scythe is going to put a quick end to that. Then we have Spirit Breaker, more traditionally played as a POS 4, but actually quite strong in the POS 3 role right now. Just a strong brawling hero, high tempo kind of hero that can do well in a lot of games. And Spirit Breaker is actually a hero that scales reasonably well, so you can definitely make him work as a core. Then Legion Commander, very powerful offlaner, provides a lot of utility with her pressy attack, which is a strong dispel, and you have the strong disable with dual. Overwhelming odds is great against summons and illusions, and can help you also just in regular team fights with multiple heroes. So this is in particular against these sort of summon or illusion strats. This hero excels, but it's also really good at picking off particular high value carries, like an anti-mage for example, is really going to be afraid of getting dueled. So then we go to the B tier. These heroes, they're decent but not overpowered. First we have Kunkka, traditionally more of a mid laner, but can also be played in the offlane. He's just fine. He provides good amount of team fight, of AoE damage. He's a decent laner, and also has some catch with the X marks the spot, but he doesn't really have this sort of traditional initiation as much, because all the stuff is a bit delayed, so you don't really have the instant stun, so that can be a bit of a weakness for Kunkka. Then we have Venomancer, who is very powerful but also kind of unusual as an offlaner, and then he has no stuns, only some weak slows, but he just dishes out huge amounts of damage over time, and with his Plague Waltz he offers a lot of map control, a lot of map vision, and he can be very strong in lane, very good at harassment in lane, not good at killing in lane, but very good at gaining value over time with that Poison Sting. And also here they can farm quite well, it's quite good at jungling, and it's also good at just pushing lanes and being just in general very annoying. But if you pick this hero, you need to make sure that your team has enough stuns on the other positions. Then we have Sand King, a traditional offlaner who just offers a lot of AoE damage, some stun, and pretty good lane presence. He's a very good hero at defending towers, so oftentimes you want to, as Sand King, sort of stick around these important towers. It's hard to defend towers, like the tower in your own safe lane, for example, something that Sand King is really good at defending. And you can sort of hang around this tower and be hard to kill, and then if the enemy team commits a lot of heroes onto him, then there's enough time for your teammates to teleport in. So that's one thing that Sand King really excels at. And then just generally is a good team fighter and just overall solid hero. Dawnbreaker can be kind of a good laner, and obviously she has a strong global presence, but she's kind of missing an instant stun, so she doesn't have the best initiation. Kind of relies on someone else to initiate, and then she can follow up. And she's just solid overall, but nothing too outstanding. Chaos Knight, I feel, is a bit of an underrated hero. We saw him actually played a couple of times as an offlaner at TI. And this hero can actually do quite well with a modest amount of farm. Which is good because he just does not farm fast, and that's one problem that makes him a bit hard to play as a carry. But as an offline, that's fine. You just get like treads and an omelet, and you're already really, really powerful. And you add maybe like a Heaven's Halberd on top of that. You get a whole bunch of strength for your illusions. Evasion also works on illusions. And obviously you get that utility that's great to have on an offlaner. Or you can just go straight into BKB, or maybe throw in something like a drum along the way. And yeah, this hero is just really, really good at picking off people. You have this Chaos Bolt plus Reality Rift, very strong at killing individual heroes with Phantasm. Also strong initiation, especially if you get a Blink Dagger, very viable on offlane as well. This very long initiation with Blink plus Reality Rift. And then also you have a very powerful Aghanims. So this creates an illusion of all allied heroes, including yourself. So you get 5 illusions that have 100% damage. And this actually is higher value on an offlaner than it would be on a carry, because well, this way you can create not only illusion of yourself, but also of your carry. So if you have some sort of carry that also has strong illusions, like a Luna, for example, you can make an illusion of her as well, and just get a lot of value out of that. It's also a weak dispel for your entire team, so great against things like silences and roots. So a huge value than Aghanims if you can get it. But of course, the big downside of this hero is that he just does not farm particularly fast. Next up is everyone's favorite spider, Broodmother, who's a hero who was very powerful a while, and she was nerfed into the pits of hell, and now she's sort of slowly emerging from there. She's gotten a couple of buffs over the last couple of patches, and now she's actually in a pretty decent shape. So a bit of a cheesy hero, obviously, but a hero that can do quite well, whether it's in the offlane or in the mid lane. Yeah, it just really depends on the kind of lineups you're picking her into. Next up, we have none other than the Bounty Hunter. Not really something that's been seen as an offlaner in a long time. He was a popular offlaner back in like 2013 or something like that. But since then, he's been mostly played as a POS 4 or 5. But nowadays, he can actually offer quite a bit of laning prowess with these constant Janata hits, stealing your opponent's gold. And when I play Bounty Hunter as a core, the idea is just to build items that make you fast and that allow you to stick onto your targets. So you build, like phase boots, you build over venom, you build, or even just over corrosion, you build maybe something like a drum, and then you just go into a quick BKB so that you can just keep on top of your targets, and you're going to be putting out a good amount of damage just from your Jinada and from your Shuriken toss. You don't really need to build damage items per se. So you just build these items that allow you to be fast and to not get disabled. And yeah, you just try to fight a lot with the team, and you can get decent items just from the track kills. Then we have 3 heroes that are kind of a bit similar. These 3 ranged heroes that are more traditionally seen as mid laners, but can also be played in the off lane. All 3 of those are very strong against certain kinds of heroes. So like Death Prophet is very strong in lane against the slower melee heroes. Same for Razor. You have both cases, some sort of siphon ability, the Spirit Siphon, or you can siphon off damage with the Razor Link. And these slower melee heroes really struggle against that. And then Viper, well, he has his poison attack, which is also in particular strong against melee heroes that have to get closer to the creeps to actually last hit and deny. And so as long as you don't die on Razor, you just keep putting out a lot of damage. So he's a very strong lane dominator. but for Viper to really be strong, you need to be playing him in a matchup where you can get some good value from another toxin, especially that disabling of passives there. So if that break has no particular value in that game, then Viper is not the pick you want. Picking just for lane domination is not quite enough. With Razor these days, you usually want to go for a magic build. So you get pretty early BKB, you get eventually you get like a refresher and an Aghanims, probably Aghanims first, and then you get this double ultimate with Aghanims, and it's very, very powerful. Next we have Slada, pretty nice, straightforward offlaner. Thing about Slada is that his laning tends to be a bit polarizing. Sometimes you can just completely dominate lanes and crush people, no pun intended. And other times you can kind of get forced out of lane. Because this hero is very strong on the offense, but his defensive capabilities are not quite there. And also generally this hero is not really a tank, so you tend to be a bit squishy by the standards of a strength offlaner. But you have a lot of teamfight utility. Slithering Crush has very low cooldown, only 8-second cooldown, so you can sort of get in fights, get off the Crush, then get off a stun with Bash at the Deep, and suddenly sort of run away a bit with your Guardian Sprint, then you go back in again when you have Slithering Crush again. And obviously this hero is great at taking out low armor targets. It's a great ability for roshing, so 20 armor reduction at level 3 is just insane. And even just the basic 10 just makes it so much easier to, for example, take down Roche. A problem is just there's some games, some lanes where he just doesn't really get out of the gates, and then it can be very hard to play Slada when you're not having a good game. Next, we have Slack's favorite Wind Ranger. This is a hero that can be played in various different roles. Obviously, you have high single target damage, you have a stun, but it's a bit unreliable. So this hero is just overall a bit, you know, she's average. She's a decent laner, you know, she has good pickup potential, but not that great as a team fighter. She has, you know, some evasiveness to her, but of course can be countered by MKB or just by Dispel, because Wind Run can be dispelled, so that can be rather annoying against certain heroes and items. Next we have Pango, a hero that benefited quite a bit from Shield Crash being buffed, so nowadays Pango is no longer as much about maximizing the swashbuckle value, so you might still get something like a Maelstrom in some games, but most of the time you're probably better off skipping that and playing a bit less greedy, more buying items that help you win team fights. And you know, there's great items you can go for. Blink Dagger is great in this hero. You can get things like a Yules to get this sort of extended stun from Rolling Thunder, and you can just generally build, you know, some tanky items, because especially when you combine like the Shield Crash, this hero can get quite tanky. Then next up we have Axe, hero that was rather underwhelming for a while, but the recent patch got him some minor buffs, and now he's kind of okay again. Still not great, but can definitely do quite well in certain matchups. Then we have Dragon Knight, very basic hero, obviously, also rather boring hero, anime notwithstanding. But yeah, this can work fine as an offline. He has a stun, and at least in melee form, the stun is instant. In range form, it's not quite instant, but almost. It's hard to dodge. And you know, he's tanky. He has, you know, some wave clear. Just rarely gonna have a game where Dragon Knight is useless, but he's just kind of a basic hero. Then we have Mars, who's also like a fairly straightforward hero. Thing is, he has been nerfed quite a bit, so he's no longer as strong as he used to be, and you know, his win rates kind of reflect that. They're not very high, but also he has very high pick rates. So This is a hero that I think a lot of people are overvaluing a bit. He's a bit overrated, but can still definitely be decent. And if you really like playing Mars, you're a good Mars player, you can keep picking him. Bloodseeker is a hero that works quite well as an offlaner as well. Obviously have a high kill potential with Rupture. What you usually want to do with Bloodseeker is you want to combine this with an item that can disable TP, and usually Atos is the weapon of choice there. Great item. You can either use it to more like initiate when you want to catch heroes, because that's such a long range, more range than Rupture does, or of course you can combine it with Rupture when someone wants to TP out. And the stats also kind of nice on Bloodseeker. Even the mana can be quite useful on him. And then you just want to get like an early BKB and, you know, just fight a lot. You actually have decent teamfight contribution thanks to your Blood Rite. And once people start getting low, Thirst, it's gonna give you a lot of buffs. So it's a decent fighting kind of offlaner. But of course he has no direct stun, so that's a bit of a downside to this hero. Magnus, on the other hand, does have a very strong stun, goes to BKB, but unfortunately this hero was nerfed a bit after his very dominant TI performance. And even before that, he wasn't doing that hot in pub games. So yeah, this hero would very underwhelming win rate, but his pick rates are still fairly high, so that's why I'm putting him here in B tier and not any lower than that. The problem with this hero is just it requires a lot of coordination to really make use of Skewer properly. And even something like Empower, just coordinating with your teammates, with your carry especially, so that you can sort of meet up, empower him, and he keeps farming. That's actually kind of hard to coordinate in pubs, and, you know, doing that while not impeding your farm efficiency. Because you don't want, you know, you don't want as a carry to have to ping out the Magnus, you know, come buff me, and then Magnus sort of goes across half the map to buff someone. That's not efficient. You want to have this sort of natural farming rotations that where you sort of naturally meet up at a particular point and empower. And doing that sort of thing smoothly, it really requires a well-functioning team. And in pubs, you can't really expect that. Next, we have a Vengeful Spirit, traditionally more of a support hero, but nowadays she actually works quite well as an offlaner. The problem with her as an offlaner is that she's kind of weak laner, sort of similar to her problem as a support. But once you're past the laning stage, and especially once you have an Aghanim's, you can actually contribute a lot, because you become very, very hard to kill, because you always have that sort of second life with your illusion. And yeah, this hero obviously offers a lot of physical damage and has a nice stun. And you has this BKB piercing, nether swap. You can cancel his piece with this. So great against heroes like Lifestealer or Juggernaut that have this BKB ability inbuilt, so you can always just disrupt a BKB TP or a spin TP or rage TP. So that's very high value. And then here at the very bottom of the B tier, we have two beefy boys, Underlord and Centaur, very traditional offlaners. And if I was doing this just for high level games, I would put them even lower than B tier. But in the lower tiers, these heroes tend to do quite well, so that's why they're in B tier. So if you like in, let's say, like 4K or lower, this hero, you can really put him more like upper B tier or even A tier. But if you're at like Divine or Immortal level, this is more like a C tier hero. And similar thing can be said for Centaur. He's a hero that does not do that well in high MMR games, but great in low MMR games. When most people actually know how to play against these heroes, they're no longer offering quite as much value. But they're easy and straightforward to play, so especially if you're like new to the offlane role, these are perfectly fine heroes to pick up. Another hero in a similar category is also a very basic and straightforward offlaner. Great if you still want to start out learning offlane, is Tidehunter. He's only in the C tier though. His win rates are not the greatest. And especially if you go up to like higher level pub games, he tends to not do that well. Despite being picked quite frequently at TI, in pubs he's not doing all that well. So that's why he's only here in C tier. But if it's a good talent in the game, you can definitely still pick him. Similar thing for Doom. Here we also saw quite a lot at TI, but his win rate's just not that great. Nature's Prophet, a hero that's also something we saw at TI a lot and quite successful there. Also a hero that can do quite well in higher level games. But by high level I mean like 6-7k and above. Then that's where you find people who actually really know how to play this hero, and then they can do quite well. But this hero is, first of all, it requires a huge amount of individual skill. That also requires your teammates to play around you and fully utilize that teleport ability. So that is a hero that, unless you're like in the top 0.2% of players or whatever, you're just better off just ignoring this hero, because it's so hard to play and so hard to make work. And because he does so well in pro games, he always tends to get nerfed whenever he becomes anywhere close to good at lower levels. Next we have Tony, who again we saw a lot of at TI, but he of course has been nerfed a bit since then, and also in the offlane role he doesn't really fit there too well right now. The nerfs that we got after TI also definitely hurt the offlane Tiny a lot. But the carry Tiny is still going to have a huge value from Aghanim Shard. But as an offlaner, that's not as big of a deal. So I would recommend against picking this hero in the offlane. If you must pick Tiny, probably carry is still the best bet. Next we have Abba. Hero obviously has a lot of value with the Aphotic Shield, Strong Dispel. But that's not really a justification for playing him in the offlane. And this Curse of Awareness is nice and all, but it's just not that strong right now. So if you want to play this hero, if you want the Strong Dispel, either play him as a +5, or if you want that Strong Dispel in offlaner, just pick Legion instead. You're gonna have a better time. Leshrak does better as a mid laner. As an offlaner, he kind of tends to struggle. Similar thing for Batrider. Both these heroes just do a bit better if you have more tempo as a mid laner. Bristleback, a hero that does quite well in lower level games, but once people know how to play against him, he tends to fall off a bit. But still, even higher level games, there's still definitely situations where you want to pick him. He's great at countering these zoo kind of heroes, great against illusions. But in general, the hero tends to be a bit weak. And similar thing can be said for Timbersaw, a hero that has a strong laning presence at the start, very strong early game, but then tends to fall off. So, and is also like strong against these summon heroes and such. But he's just overall a bit underwhelming, and he just doesn't provide a stun or anything like that. Similar to Bristleback, only like a little bit of a slow here and there, but no stuns. And what he provides is just not quite enough to justify picking him in most games. And finally, we have the D tier heroes that you should just avoid. You should not pick them in the offlane right now, because they either don't fit the role or just not strong enough in general. First, you have Ench. If you want to play Ench, just play as a support. You're going to have the dominant laning phase, and you can really open up the lane for your carry, or even for your offlane if you play as a 4. But as a +3, he just doesn't quite offer enough and doesn't scale well enough. Ogre, similar story there. Yeah, you get the Midas and whatnot, but even with Midas, Ogre does not really scale well enough to be classified as an offlaner. And then Quap, it just does not really do that well in the offlane. She really needs a lot of levels. She needs to have that tempo that comes from being a mid laner. as an offlaner, you're going to be low level for too long, and yeah, sure, you have blink to sort of save yourself and not die, but not dying isn't enough. You actually need to win your lanes. And then finally Pudge, a hero that, you know, actually right now is like not that bad of a spot if you play him as a support, but as an offlaner, yeah, it just doesn't offer enough. Don't play Core Pudge, just play him as a pos 4 or even a pos 5. But probably pos 4, you can actually farm quite well now with the hook, which was buffed a bit in the E patch. It insta kills creeps, so it's kind of similar to what a pos 4 Mirana would do. You throw out some arrows or hooks to try to get kills, but you can also on the way throw out some hooks or arrows to get some creeps and get some extra farm. So yeah, this hero, don't play him as an offlane, play him as a support if you must. So that is my tier list for the offlane for 730E. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Recently I've been putting out a lot of AoE4 content just because that game is new and it's just exciting to see a new AAA RTS game. But I'm definitely going to continue making Dota content here on this channel, in addition to, at least in the near future, AoE4 content. So if you don't want to miss the next videos, please subscribe and also click on those videos here on the screen to see some more great Dota content from me. And all is willing, I'll see you there.